The story begins on October 13th, 1972, where we are shown a rugby team that is heading from Uruguay to Chile to play their final match. Many of these players were very happy because they were going to play outside their country for the first time, and some of the players' family members were also traveling with them for support. Finally, their plane took off, but their flight wasn't supposed to be very long, as it usually only takes 3 hours to fly from Uruguay to Chile. However, on the way are the dangerous Andes Mountains, which would later become a source of trouble for our passengers. For some time, everything went fine, but a little later, everyone experiences a terrible turbulence, which frightens all the players. But before they could even think, the plane starts shaking up and down very rapidly. The pilots of this plane also try their best to save the aircraft. But then, the plane collides with a mountain and breaks into 2 pieces. Following this, the front part of the plane slides on the snow and crashes into a rock. The collision was so severe that all the seats in the plane piled up on top of each other, and many passengers were crushed to death. Now, those who survived the accident gathered themselves and then helped the remaining people in the plane. After this, some people quickly reached the pilots and tried to pull them out. But during this, both pilots also died. There was blood all around them. But everyone tried to calm each other down. Soon after, night fell, and the temperature rapidly dropped. That's why, to protect themselves from the cold, they used the back section of the plane, covering it with bags and bodies, and hid inside. But some people were still in deep shock from the accident, but others supported them somehow. But when morning came, 3 or 4 more injured passengers had died from the cold. Now the remaining passengers come out of the plane, but as far as they can see, only snow-covered mountains are visible. Well, now they all take out all the luggage and seats from the plane so that everyone can have a place to sleep inside the plane. After this, they laid all the injured people out in the sun so that they could feel better. And they checked everyone's belongings and put whatever food and drink they found into a separate suitcase. Following this, they take all the dead bodies away from the plane and cover them with snow to prevent them from decomposing so that they can take the bodies with them when someone comes to rescue them. And now that things were slightly settled, they rested a little and ate some food. But all these people knew that this food would have to last until they received help. But in the meantime, a plane passes over them, so they all shout loudly to make their presence known. But it is of no use because their plane was white, and it crashed in a place where there was white snow and ice everywhere. Some time later, night fell, and they all hid inside the plane and slept, and their second night passed like this too. Now, the next morning, a boy named Nando regains consciousness, who had been unconscious since the plane crash. But as soon as he wakes up, he quickly goes to his sister, hugs her, and asks about his mother. He is told that his mother is dead. Now, some passengers try to use the suitcases to make a large cross on the snow so that the rescue team can see them from above. Just then, another plane passes over them. So, these people tried to draw its attention by flashing a piece of glass. And they all thought that maybe that plane had seen them, and now very soon, it would come to take them away from here. But as they waited, another night passed, and no one came to rescue them. Now, the next day, they remembered that there were batteries in the back section of the plane, and perhaps with the help of those batteries, the plane's radio system could be operated. That's why they now wanted to find the rear section of the plane. When they reached a little distance, they saw that the area below was not visible due to the snow, and perhaps that was why no rescue team had been able to save them until now. But just then, the snow started sliding, and they decided to turn back. Now, days passed in this manner, and after a week, all their food ran out, and there were no plants or trees there. That's why they tried to eat the moss growing on the rocks, but this only made them sicker. Then Nando said that if things continued like this, he would eat the flesh of the dead bodies if he had to, and this sparked an argument among everyone. With time, their hunger increased so much that they started eating shoelaces and whatever they could find. But due to hunger, Nando's sister died here. For the next few days, the cold kept getting more intense. But everyone kept saving their lives by hiding inside the plane. But after 21 days, everyone was going crazy with hunger, so the rest of the people finally gave them permission to eat the flesh of the dead bodies. Then they went out and started cutting and eating the flesh with glass. Eventually, only 5 people remained who preferred to die rather than become cannibals. Then the next day, others started cutting the bodies farther away so that it wouldn't be distressing for the others. Now, during this time, they found a suitcase buried in the snow inside which there was a radio. Then they made an antenna from that radio and listened to the news, on which they found out that the government had sent many helicopters to search for them, but they had all been unsuccessful in finding them. That's why they had permanently called off the rescue operation. Hearing this, everyone's spirits were broken, and those who had refused to eat the meat before now had to eat it because they knew that no one was coming to save them anymore. After this, 3 boys bravely set out again to find the back part of the plane, and a little further, they found some broken debris of the plane and some dead bodies that had fallen down in the plane crash. After this, they moved forward, but the slippery snow and icy winds made it difficult for them to even breathe. When they tried to sleep at night, there was a snowstorm all around, and when they woke up the next morning, they were alive. But their condition was now very poor. That's why they came down sitting on the plane's wreckage. Seeing them empty-handed, everyone became sad. After this, even that last man ate human flesh. Days passed, and these people barely managed to keep themselves alive for 17 days. But the bad thing was that the weather had been very bad for the last 5 days. Everyone was huddled inside the plane when suddenly a big storm came and filled the plane with snow. Everyone inside was buried under the snow. The people who were on top were very scared, but recovering themselves, they dug through the snow and pulled out the buried people. Everyone got out on time, but one woman was buried deeper and died due to suffocation. Everyone was just recovering from this grief when another storm came, and everyone was buried under the snow again. This storm was so intense that some people died immediately. The people trapped inside quickly made a hole so that they could get oxygen. After a few hours, everyone gathered courage and placed 8 dead bodies in a corner. 18 days had passed, meaning 2 days were spent under the snow, and everyone was troubled by hunger. Now, there was only one way left to survive: to eat the flesh of the dead bodies. But the difficulty was that those bodies were of their own people, so no one had the courage to eat them. Seeing this, a boy named Numa got angry and started breaking the plane's window. During this, the glass entered his foot, but he didn't stop. After 2 days of effort, he made a hole in the snow, and everyone came out. Everyone was very happy upon coming out. After some time, everyone started pulling the plane out of the snow. Numa felt that the wound on his foot no longer hurt because the snow had numbed the wound. He didn't pay much attention to it and continued to dig the snow. The sun had come out, so digging the snow became easier, and in a few hours, the plane was pulled out. Now everyone thought that the back part of the plane should be searched. But they couldn't understand how they would face the icy nights. They had no other option. That's why they decided to wait for the summer season so that the climb would become easier. Days passed, and now after 24 days, the weather had improved. They could barely move, let alone walk. During this time, bad news arrived. Coco's lungs had filled with water. Everyone tried hard to save Coco, but they couldn't, and he died. A little later, his body was buried, and a letter he had written was kept safely. 2 more days passed, and after 26 days, 4 members of the group decided to climb. These 4 were Roberto, Tin, Numa, and Nando. They set out in search of the plane's back section. After walking for a while, Numa suddenly fell. When they checked, the infection from the wound on his foot had spread. They told Numa to turn back, but he refused and decided to return alone. When he came back to the plane, his condition was very bad, and he fell unconscious. A little later, when he woke up, he saw his friends clearing snow from the plane. The next day, those 3 people also returned, and the good news was that they had found the rear section of the plane. Inside the plane, they found a lot of other supplies besides batteries. They found piles of clothes, bottles of rum, and cigarette packets. They put the batteries into the radio and tried to make contact with the outside world, but there was no response. This meant their last hope was also broken. Meanwhile, Numa's health was deteriorating because the infection had spread throughout his entire body. The plane's food had also run out, and everyone was forced to eat human flesh again. Numa stopped eating and drinking so that there could be a little more for the others. Some people went back toward the rear section of the plane. This time they found waterproof fabric, which they used to make a sleeping bag. Then, on the radio, they heard the news that it had been 58 days since the crash and the government was sending a final mission. Hearing this, the group became divided. Some started saying they should wait for the rescue, while the rest said maybe no one would even see them. That night, Numa's condition worsened. Before dying, he said in a trembling voice, "Eat my body and you all live." A little later, his breathing stopped. Tears flowed from everyone's eyes. But out of necessity, no one said anything. After this, Roberto, Tintin, and Nando decided to set out in search of help. Taking just one sleeping bag and a little food, they vowed that even if it cost them their lives, they would cross the mountains and reach Chile. Climbing during the day, and then huddling together in a single sleeping bag to survive the cold night. This became the daily routine. They continued walking for many days. Finally, when they reached a high peak, their spirits began to break upon seeing even bigger mountains ahead. Food was very scarce. Tim decided to return, giving his food to Roberto and Nando, because the food was little and the journey was long. Now, the two continued forward. After 10 days of walking, Roberto and Nando reached an area where there was less snow, and they also found a river with clear water. Now, both of them started drinking water from there. At this moment, they saw a man riding a horse who was on the other side of the river. Both shouted loudly for help, but due to the noise of the water, the man couldn't understand anything. Then he threw a piece of paper on which Roberto and Nando wrote their story. The man took the paper to the government, and the rescue mission began. He took Roberto and Nando to his home and fed them. Reporters soon arrived there as well. The people stuck up on the mountain also heard the good news and waited for the rescue. The rescue team arrived quickly, and after 72 days of the plane crash, everyone was saved. After this, they were brought to the city, and all were admitted to the hospital and were welcomed like heroes. Everyone helped each other there. They bathed, cleaned up, and got separate beds, but they all slept together that night too because the trauma had not yet left their hearts. In the end, it is learned that there were a total of 45 people on the plane.